Good morning, everybody. Shavua Tov. Hope everybody is doing well. Okay, Parshat Shmini. No Parshat Shmini. Sorry, the next one. Conceiving new life. Is that what you have, folks? Is that what you have?
Yes.
Okay. So great. Okay. So, Ethel, would you mind?
Okay.
Thank you.
Conceiving new life, the deepest intimacy. One of the analogies used to describe the relationship between God and the Jewish people is the love between a man and a woman. On the human level, this relationship is multidimensional, including the deepest levels of intimacy. Similarly, the love between the Jews and God is a complex, dynamic union. The Holy One, blessed be He, and Israel are one, joined in an ardent bond. Indeed, the prophet uses the simile, your maker is your mate. On the mortal plane...
Okay, so that's from Isaiah. That he describes Hashem as our soulmate, as our partner, as our marriage partner. Continue, go on, thank you.
On the mortal plane, physical intimacy is more than a connection between man and woman. New life is conceived. Similarly, with regard to the bond between God and the Jewish people, the relationship propagates vitality.
All right, so he's saying that the relationship creates life. Now, this is true even when there's no physical conception. In the Kabbalah, we learn that when there's intimacy between husband and wife, so there's a spiritual creation. Souls are given birth to. Energies, souls. So it's a kind of spiritual birth, even if you don't see it with the physical eye. Goes far beyond just the physical components of intimacy. It is at once a meeting of certainly bodies merging into one, but souls merging into one, and moreover, the creation or the revelation of new souls. So Kabbalistically, the relationship between husband and wife is a very sacred bond, very delicate, very deep, very strong. Let's continue. Ethel, continue. It's a short section.
Planting seeds. The opening verse of our Torah reading alludes to this concept, stating, when a woman conceives and gives birth, the woman refers to the Jewish people who bring new life into the world.
Right. Yeah, so the physical details or the simple meaning of the verse is talking about the laws of childbirth. And when the temple stood, the thanksgiving offering that would be brought by the woman at a certain point after having given birth, the details there are in the Torah. Male, offspring is male, offspring is female. So that's what the Parsha talks about. It talks about circumcision also for a male. But on a deeper level, it's talking about us and God. And it's saying, so we are the bride, God is the groom. So Isha ki Tazria, when a woman will bear seed, refers to each one of us in the new light that every mitzvah really brings to the world. Yeah, continue, please.
More particularly, Tazria, the term translated as conceives, means gives seed. This term also is of metaphoric significance, for after a seed is planted in the earth, its shell must decompose. Only then will the growth potential of the earth be expressed.
Okay, so it's going to develop this notion of a seed in the broadest sense, and how it produces the plant, the life, the tree. And he made the point here that the seed must first germinate or decompose. Only then does it unleash its power of life, of creating life. Before we go there, I just want to point out, I don't think he mentions it here, no, that every mitzvah we do, every mitzvah is a unity between God and man that produces this life, this seed. In fact, many Hasidim, Chabad doesn't do this, but I'll tell you what Chabad does. So let me tell you what we do. Our custom is that before the main part of the morning prayer, every single day of the year, we say every day of the year, there's the Shachrit, and there's certain, the main part of the Shachrit service is constant throughout the year, 365 days a year. So it begins with the Baruch She'omar. So before that, Baruch She'omar, blessed be he who said and brought the world into existence, that's what that prayer begins. So there's a little line there that appears in Chabad Siddur, in all Hasidic Siddurim, and also in all Sephardic Siddurim, because the Sephardic world is very much based on Kabbalah in a very transparent way. The Ashkenaz Siddur is also based on Kabbalah, but it's not so obvious, and they don't spell it out. The Hasidic movement, as you all know, embraces and teaches the Kabbalah, the soul, the inner dimension of Judaism. So again, this will be found in all Hasidic Siddurim and all Sephardic Siddurim. What will you find? So you got one at home, look it up, you'll see that before the Baruch She'omar, the Jew declares that what I'm about to do, which is to fulfill the mitzvah of prayer, and if it's a male, a talit, and he's wearing tefillin during the weekday, L'shem yichud kutshabrichu u'shchinte. That's a phrase that everybody who learns Chassidus, every Chassid knows, because he's said if not once a day, they say it many times a day. And it means, what I'm about to do is for the purpose of the unity, of unifying the Holy One, blessed be He, and His Shekhinah. That's what this mitzvah is about to effect. A unity between the Holy One, blessed be He, and the Shekhinah. The Holy One, blessed be He, is masculine, the Shekhinah is feminine, referring to the feminine manifestation of God, Malchut, in general, and specifically us. So this mitzvah, stated in simple language, in simple vernacular, what the person is saying is that the mitzvah I'm about to do affects a unity between God and us. Exactly what he's talking about here. And the seed, therefore, the life that is produced, that this mitzvah releases in the world. So I told you that the Chabad minig is, we say it once in the morning, and that is said as a statement of intent and kavanah and meditation for all the mitzvahs we're going to do in the course of the day. So it's not repeated each time. However, in many other Hasidic courts, traditions, they actually enunciate the Shem Yichud for the sake of the unity of the Holy One, blessed be He, that's the masculine, with Shchinte and His Shekhinah, which is feminine, which is essentially us. They say this before every mitzvah. So the Seder night, it's said many times, because there are many mitzvahs that are done in the course of the Seder. Many, tens of mitzvahs are done. And they say, remember as a kid growing up, hearing it, the Shem Yichud before each mitzvah. But we say it again, beginning of the day, and we have the intent for all the mitzvahs we're going to do in the course of the day. Now here in our text, what he's focusing here is on the metaphor, the symbolism of the seed, which is how our parsha begins. Isha kis Tazria, when a woman takes seed or bears seed or creates seed. All a metaphor for us, where the woman, the seed is the mitzvah. Now the point he just said now, which gives life, that the seed only is able to produce life if it lets go of being a seed. If it hangs on tightly, I'm a seed and I'm not surrendering, so that's it. You remain a nice seed and have a nice seed for life. We ain't going to produce any fruit, any life. You're not going to become what you really truly can become if you hang on to who you are. That's what he just said. That the seed has to let go, has to germinate, has to merge with the earth. decompose, then life is born. So let's continue. This motif, he likes that word motif, our translator. So let's continue. Ethel, please continue.
This motif applies to our people as a whole and to every individual. Our lives center around material concerns. Even with regard to our divine service, it is the actual observance of the mitzvahs, not the feelings they arouse, which is of primary importance.
Okay, he just made a big statement. He said, number one, of course, we're physical people. That's our consciousness. We're cold, we're hungry, we're tired. We need love, we need attention, we need lots of needs. Physical. By physical also means physiological, emotional. That's physical, the physical body. You need to be hugged. Not only that, he just said in the next sentence, even the mitzvahs we do, the mitzvahs, the divine commandments, they're first and foremost physical. You eat the matzah, put on the film, light the candle, immerse in the mikveh, and so on. So even the mitzvahs are essentially physical. The point he just said was that if you do a mitzvah even without intent, you brought no spirituality to it, you're just doing it. You still connect, you still fulfill the mitzvah. You put on film and he doesn't understand why, he's just doing it because the pesky Chabad boy, okay, the cute Chabad boy is asking him, sir, you're Jewish, you put on film, okay. He puts on film. Very little spirituality to the way he does it. Nonetheless, it doesn't detract whatsoever from the essential mitzvah. He connects, he brings godliness to the world. A woman's in the ocean. She doesn't even know, not even aware that she needs to immerse in the mikveh based on her cycle. And if she doesn't, she's forbidden to have relations with her husband. Doesn't even know that. But she happens to be bathing in the ocean. And if she immerses herself completely, she went to the mikveh, unbeknownst to her. All to say, or another example, a person lost his wallet or he lost some money, fell out of his pocket. He didn't even know he lost. Doesn't even know till later. Maybe never knows. And a poor person finds the money and sustains him or herself or the family. Mitzvah was done. No intent at all. Not even know what happened. Yes, continue. So that's what he just said now. It is the actual observance of the mitzvahs, not the feelings they arouse, which is of primary importance. Continue. Yes, continues developing the idea. Ethel,
Yes,
please, thanks.
yes, God desires the heart. But if one meditates on the
So in other words, he's saying, yes, God desires the heart. There's no question that we should do the mitzvahs with feeling and understanding, etc. That's an important component, but not the critical one. But, as he goes on to say, if one
meditates on the Shema all morning with love and fear, yet doesn't actually recite the words, or if one is inspired with heartfelt compassion for a poor person but fails to actually give him charity, one's divine service would be inadequate, for deed is what is most essential.
Yeah. So, for example, a Seder night, a person's at the Seder and they're discussing the meaning of his freedom, is explaining the Kabbalah and the Matzah, humility doesn't rise, all the beautiful ideas we've been learning together over the years, and discussing it deeper and deeper and deeper, and not actually eat the Matzah. Goonish. No mitzvah was done, no connection, no seeds, nothing happened. Got to do it. Eat the Matzah. The right amount, at the right time, in the right way. You know what I'm referring to? It's got to be Shemura Matzah. It's got to be eaten after nightfall, which is pretty late. Daylight savings is a conspiracy against the Jews. It makes life very challenging. Now they want to make it in the winter. It's going to be crazy. You can't daven until, can't put on film until 8 o'clock, or even later probably in the winter. People could go to work. I mean, it's going to be a big challenge. But that was an aside. The point is that what? So example, matzah, you got to eat after nightfall, whatever time it is this year, and it's got to be shemura matzah, and you got to eat it without interrupting, no talking, no nothing. At least the volume of an olive, which is about a third of a matzah. We're not going to go into details now, but just bringing out that what? That after all is said and done, and all the spirituality and the meaning behind matzah and water and flour, what that means, and unleavened and volumes written in. I'm sitting just looking at the books that I'm surrounded in my office at home. But you don't actually eat it. No. Gunish. Nothing should be nothing. Continue. And thus, mitzvahs are referred to. Let's go back to the general subject. Continue, Ethel, please. Thank you.
And thus, mitzvahs are referred to as seeds, as it is written. Sow for yourselves for charity. For every mitzvah is an infusion of divine energy into our material world, which when cultivated will blossom and bear fruit.
So you're kind of just basically saying that the mitzvah bottom line is an act invested in the world that yields spiritual fruit, brings light into the world, holiness into the world, sanctity into the world. Okay, he's not developing here the idea of the seed decomposing. There's many layers to the meaning of that. And the basic meaning is the seed's got to let go of its own perception of itself. What that means in simple language is if a person says, okay, I love this, I want to do spirituality, and then they decide, I'm going to do spirituality the way I like to do spirituality. Very nice, but you can remain a seed. You got to let go. We have to let go of all of our own constructs and ask the simple question, no, dear God, how do I do this? What do I do? Oh, so that you got the mitzvahs, we have the instructions, and here we know, here we let go of the self, we plug into something higher. That's part of what he's conveying here, but it doesn't develop it further, I don't think. So thank you, Ethel. No, one more paragraph in this section. Please go ahead.
The ultimate fruit will be the redemption in the era when godliness invested in the world, when the godliness invested in the world by the divine service of the Jewish people over thousands of years will flourish. This will remake the nature of existence, allowing us to appreciate the divine core of all being. And since the world itself will then become conscious of its godly nature, this redemption will never be followed by exile, for godliness will never again be concealed.
Now what he's saying is that all the mitzvahs we've done over the millennia, it's the seeds planting in the earth, they haven't yet yielded their fruit in a conscious way. The world's a dark place, a very confused place, which is good. Confusion is very healthy, because it allows for the letting go and being open to something else. I'm just going to mention in parenthesis now what I'd mentioned yesterday in Shul, in our first talk. So I was complimenting, believe it or not, the new woke culture. A lot of people are aghast. I think it's a good thing. What's so good about it? Because it's tearing down every possible border, which in the end leaves us like all so deeply empty and wanting. So my point yesterday was, and I mentioned this, I think, on Friday, Friday at 5. I'll say it again because some of you, I see you were not you were yesterday in Shul and not on Friday, so I'll share this with you now. I think it's worth sharing. I was saying that Shlichus, it's a very personal observation. Nacham and I went down to Shlichus. This was in Shamri Laval in 1981. It's very different today in many ways. Number one, back then in 81 and certainly days prior, we had it was a daunting task to convince people about Shabbos and kosher. It was taking on a lot. The real protest was, we're in the modern world, and you're taking us back to the dark ages. This is the new world, enlightened, prosperous. And we got to say, yes, but Shabbos, we got to keep Shabbos. And people needed to really understand that. Why would anybody undertake Shabbos? It's such an imposition. The bottom line protest, and the resistance was, this is all just impositions on life. You can't eat this, you have to eat that. So people view Judaism as a whole lot of a Torah, as a whole lot of restrictions and limits, and so. And who wants restrictions? That was then, dear friends. But today, things have shifted. And it's thanks again to the woke culture that just tore down every semblance of boundary, border, right, wrong. And when you do that, you kind of force people, because the human heart as a creation of God and the soul, which is a part of God, all human beings possess, we innately seek spiritual fulfillment. And there's a deep innate sense that there is right and there is wrong, and there are sacred boundaries. No one can escape that. It's part of our fiber, because we're made in the image of God, and God has chosen that there is light and there's darkness, and there's right and there's wrong, and there are boundaries, and there are limits, and every creation has its own unique identity. That's just innate, friend. It's innate. As much as, you know, the prevailing culture will tear down and say there's nothing innate, and it won't work because we all sense it. So what am I saying is this, that today, I saw this so clearly last Sunday, the bat mitzvah of our granddaughter in Potomac Village. You know, America is very, very assimilated, very secular. So we're Montreal, very traditional. We're lagging behind, thankfully, in that area of assimilation, what have you. So people were just astounded. And here's my point. I said, today you don't have to do anything to inspire people. Just let them see a family where there's a mother, and there's a father, and there's love, and there's respect, and there are children, and the children are children. This is a 12-year-old girl who looks like a 12-year-old girl. And this tzniut, this modesty, and this innocence, and this wholesomeness, and this love, how the kids support each other, and every child is a gift. Okay, they're not angels and not robots, of course there's, but overall there's something so beautiful here that the world is hungering for. Where do you get this? And there's only one address, the Torah. If there's a creator, and there's a purpose, and there's a sanctity in it. And the kid gets up there and says, what's the whole wish that she thanks, what is she saying? She thanks God that she's born into this home of shlichus, of, you know, these values of reaching out to your fellow Jew. And she hopes that she will also grow up this way, to live a life that is a life of service. And she's saying this is the most beautiful thing in the world. And people are going like, wow. And as I said to you on Friday, you know, the whole theme was love your fellow self as you love yourself. So the starting point was, I love myself, but how do I love my fellow? That was a big shock to people. She actually loves herself. She doesn't wish she was taller, thinner, whatever, like every other kid is plagued with. If not everybody, I wish I was. No, she has no I wish I was. She's so happy with what she is. Where'd she get that from? And this is just, where? Because there's a creator, and that's how you have to be. And it's how God wants you this way, and you're perfect. And just be you, and you be you, and everybody. I mean, these simple, very deep, but basic concepts today, because of the world culture, there's a new openness to it. Because there's just nothing else. There's nothing left. It's all been torn. It's all lies. It tatters at our feet. Every value, morality, family, gender, roles, gone. That's great. Why is it great? Because now we're ready to re-embrace it, re-understand it, coming from a very deep level. In other words, we've got to ask ourselves, now we've torn it all down, and, you know, it's everything is good, and no such thing is good for that matter, and it's about, makes you feel happy, and you define yourself, and which just doesn't cut it. You've got to ask the question, why doesn't it cut it? Isn't that utopia? You decide if you're a man, if you're a woman, and there's no values, and it's respect everything, respect nothing. Respecting nothing, because nothing has any intrinsic value. So when you tear everything down, we're left with such a deep emptiness. No, there's something deeply inside that says, no, there is. There are values, there are things, there's morality, there's something. And where does it come from? Only if there's a creator. If it's human morality, so tear it down. So I'm telling you, friends, what's happening today, it's all part of the birth pangs of Mashiach, of the seeds that were planted of the generations, the millennia. They're now going to start blossoming and bear fruit, and people want the fruit, the taste of it. Is it truly the fruit of the Garden of Eden? That's what it is. That's what mitzvahs Yiddishkeit is. The tree of life. And that's what we are hungering for. The life-giving waters, the spring, the fountains of water of life that comes from Torah. The world has never been more open. Okay. Thank you, Ethel. We'll go a little further. Okay. Robert Burke, our president of the Michael Chernak Sunday morning Torah class, Mordechai Dov ben Pesach Halevi. And again, we thank you each week for faithfully sending out the emails. And if I'm a little late, I get a gentle reminder. So Yasher Koyach, Robert, and please read for us. You have the text of the wonder of conception.
Yes, the wonder of conception. Our sages interpret the expression, when a woman conceives, as implying that it is she who initiates the intensification of the relationship. Similarly, in the analog, the implication is that man does not merely respond to God. Instead, he taps the core of his being and summons up the energy needed to heighten his connection with him.
Well, that's quite the sentence. What's he trying to say is that the term in the Torah, Isha ki Tazria, is not passive, as you might expect it to be. When a woman receives a seed and gives birth, and the laws that follow. It's not the way the Torah describes conception. It's her initiation or her role. This is way ahead of, this is just way ahead of, this is God's Torah thousands of years ago. And it's saying that conception is not just the male giving and she receives. She has this profound contribution to the whole process of conception on many levels, physiologically and the actual conception, the fertilization of the egg. But spiritually, what this means is that in a relationship with God, it's not where receiver is passively in God's the bestower, and that's where the relationship starts and ends. No, this is a marriage, the deepest way, and we have to initiate even and contribute. Okay, so continue.
On this basis, we can understand why the verse highlights the importance of conception rather than birth. Although new life is brought into the world at birth, the fetus already exists. Conception is the closest example in our lives to the creation of something from nothing.
So in other words, the real novelty is the actual conception to begin with. The birth is just the fetus develops and finally is born. The naked eye only sees when the baby comes out, but the miracle really started the moment of conception, the creation of life. And that's what the Torah highlights here, because the Torah, in other words, is asking a question and answering it. The Torah talks about the laws of birth. The baby is born, male or female, a male needs circumcision, and then female obviously not. And then she brings an offering in the temple, and the temple stood. So just talk about the birth. That's what concerns us in this passage. What does the Torah say? Conception? And the answer is because that's the real miracle, is the conception. And in the conception, it's not just the male, God's role, it's our role equally. Isha ki Tazria, when a woman will bear seed or contribute seed, is the most literal translation of the opening words of the Parshat. So let's continue. Hasidic thought explains that the potential to create something from nothing lies with God alone. Since he is not, heaven forbid, dependent on any other cause, it is within his ability to create something material existence out of absolute naught. So to create something out of nothing, which we cannot do classically, the closest to it is going to say is birth. It's also not out of nothing, but it's the closest to out of nothing. The closest to being godlike is in creation, is in conception. Only God can create out of nothing. That's because he himself is not a consequence. He's not coming from something else. He is because he is. Only he can create that out of nothing. Okay, that needs development more another time, but I think we get the general ideas. Let's get to conclude. So God hasn't, continue please, Robert.
God has imparted his essence to man, and thus the core of every soul is an actual part of God. As such, man also has the power of creation, but in reverse. He lives in this material world and makes nothing from something. revealing the godly potential that exists within himself and his ephemeral environment.
Okay, just finish the sentence and then I'll comment.
This is the power of conception possessed by the woman, mankind. Through the expression of this potential, we become God's partner in creation, fashioning the world into a dwelling for him.
All right, this is kind of multi-layered. What he just said was, I just explained, there's something from nothing. That's God, and what we do is nothing from something. Now he's alluding to something very deep. He's saying God creates, God creates. But we do something in a way even more novel. Here we take the physical existence that looks like it's just physical, that's all it is. And we turn it into something spiritual. That's what it means by that we do the opposite. What is that, as he put it?
Make nothing from something.
Yeah. In other words, nothing means not physical. We take a physical object. It's saying in simple language. We sit down to a meal. It's a breakfast. Just had my coffee. Coffee. It's coffee. It's milk. It's whatever it is. No sugar, thank you. And finished. And then it's physical. We all know what happens in the interim, the physical body. And then we have to drink again. Another doesn't get more physical. Living animals also eat and drink. And yet, when a Jew makes a bracha on the coffee, or whatever, the water, let's something healthy. Okay, put the coffee aside. Water or some juice. Drink, what do you call them? What are these juice drinks called?
Beverage.
Yeah, but there's a name for the mixture of juices. They say, no?
Smoothie.
A smoothie, yeah, healthy smoothie. That's
Cocktail.
Huh? It's all industry. Pardon?
A cocktail.
Yeah, but I'm talking about a healthy cocktail, healthy smoothie. So, whatever it is, you make a bracha. You make a bracha, you drink it, and with the energy, as we did now, we're learning Torah, you're doing what you have to do. You finish drinking it as an after blessing. What did we just do? We took something and made it no thing. We made it spiritual. We went from something to something that is beyond something. No thing. You made it spiritual. So that's our partnership with God. God creates from the spiritual, the physical. And we take the physical and we make it spiritual. Yet it remains physical. Yet it has now sanctity and meaning and purpose. That's what he's saying. That's the ultimate creative power that's expressed in birth, in the conception. That's the most physical example of existence out of nothing. Godlike, right there in conception. But every mitzvah is saying does that. Every mitzvah brings godliness into the world in a radical way. And then he added this whole new dimension, but in the reverse. We take what exists and we make it spiritual. And God starts with spiritual and creates the physical. Anyway, we'll conclude here, friends. I hope we got the general idea. The general idea is the power of our mitzvahs. We are the Isha, we are the ultimate woman, each one of us. Ki Tazria, she bears seed. We unleash godliness in the world. We create. Every mitzvah is an act of creation, physically speaking. What are we creating? We're creating spirituality in the world. We're taking the physical and we're unlocking in it, or we're imbuing in it something beyond the physical itself. We make the physical eternal. We make life eternal with each mitzvah that we do. And that's what is conveyed in these opening words of the Parsha. Friends, have a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Good to see you all. Everybody should be well and healthy. Thank you to our readers. By all means, go ahead, read further the rest of the text. He talks there about another theme of the Parsha and ties it all in. But I've got to get into a car. We're going down to, it's a 4-hour drive to visit a family. God willing, to bring them some Pesach supplies and some smiles and so on. So we need to be going so we can be back here before midnight tonight. All right, friends, have a wonderful Shabbos, a wonderful week.
Yeshikor. Shavua tov.
Thank you.
Shavua tov.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Safe driving, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you, Marlon.